Greetings, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of One Bottle Each. I'm here today with my friend Ed St. John. Ed is part of the third generation regime at Pedroncelli Winery in Sonoma County's Dry Creek Valley. Ed, thank you so much for being here. How are you tonight?
Gabe, it is great to be here. I'm doing fine. Thank you. We have a glorious February day in Sonoma County today.
Happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So, normal times, you're flying all over the country, pouring, selling Pedroncelli wine. How have you adapted during the pandemic to your job?
I am flying all over. I'm zooming all over the place is how I'm adapting. And it was kind of interesting you asked that today. This morning I was out on my walk with the dog and I get a raft of emails and received 8 appointments over the next 2.5 days that I didn't know I was going to have. So, man, I was scrambling. But, it's great. I mean, I don't have to get up at 3:30 in the morning to go to Oakland Airport to get on the plane to go somewhere. So I could have my breakfast and sit at my desk and wait for the Zoom to link up, and away we go.
So it sounds like you've adjusted to it pretty well, is what you're saying.
I love it. It's much more efficient, time-wise, expense-wise, obviously. And I think actually even for, the accounts that I visit, the restaurants or the wine shops that we're making presentations, it's more efficient for them as well. It's more efficient for the sales rep on the other end. It's funny, Gabe, when Julie or I go to a market to do market work, we essentially are sitting on a sales rep's desk all day long because these people drive around in their cars, their notes and all their stuff is on their seat next to them, and they're calling people and they're going from account to account to make, to sell their wine. And as soon as the supplier comes in, the supplier wants to use that seat. So now all their stuff goes in the back seat and it's pretty inconvenient for them. So this is, sort of a win-win for everybody here.
So that's, and I hear that. That's on the business side. On a personal level, having done this for so many years, are there markets that you regularly visit that you've sort of just missed on a personal level, not getting back to those places? And are there one or two in particular you want to share?
Most definitely a couple places that I visit regularly. And you begin to build relationships with the people there, more than just a hi, how are you? One of them being Colorado. At first I was visiting Colorado a lot, probably 3 times a year. In the past couple of years, it's only been once or twice a year, but I love the mountains. I've always said I love the mountains and I love lakes. And if I can get a lake in the mountain, that's like, that's my ideal place. So that's one region that I've visited a lot, and I really love the people there. It's a great pace of life for one thing. The other place that I visit fairly frequently is Missouri. And again, I've just built some good friends there. Look forward to going. The work is sort of superfluous. You go, you do your thing, and then you have the evening, you can hang out with a buddy or two. And I don't know, I've been known to tip a glass or 2 in the evening and regret it the next day.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because those are 2 very disparate places that you mentioned. So you're nothing if not diverse.
And, so the way it works out, Julie does most everything in the north half of the United States, and I do almost everything in the south half of the United States. I grew up, my mom and dad had a little diner, and we had a lot of employees from the deep south. So I have a real soft spot in my heart for people from the South. There's something about the lilt of the accent, and there's a genteel quality. Leave politics and shit out of it, but just it's a different pace of life and very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the South is a different pace of life, and it's interesting because, of course, California is a bit different of a pace of life from, like the East Coast, or certainly from, the Northeast. So I guess it's just different grades of it,
Well, Gabe, I've shared with you how, New York was somewhere that I never ever had any desire to go to. That's Julie's market. She loves it. She loves big cities. I like country and mountains and things like that. She does too, but I mean, we have given our choices.
Mhm.
So, her going to New York was just fine with me. And a couple of years ago, we had an event in New York City. It was the day before her birthday. Her birthday was on a weekend. And she said, how about if we go do the event? We'll go to New York, spend the weekend in New York for my birthday. Well, I always get to go pretty much where I want to go on my birthday. And so if Julie actually says she wants to go somewhere on her birthday, I'm pretty much going to say yes. And I said, well, as long as you make all the plans and all I have to do is follow you around, I'll go, I'll put on a good face, and I'll do my best to have a good time. I had a great time. We were there. It was in May. Hadn't gotten hot yet. In fact, we had a little bit of rain while we were there. Then when you joined up with us and we went and saw a little concert of a childhood friend of mine that was playing in the city, and I rode subways. All the stuff that I just had no interest in doing. I had all. I loved it. So,
I remember.
Okay.
I remember the look on your face when I first saw you that day, because you had told me before the trip, your hesitancy, in terms of big cities. So I wasn't sure, how you're going to be feeling. But when I saw you, I could tell right away that you were very comfortable.
I was digging it. Yeah, I was having a great time. Great time. And, we got to see you. We got to see another couple whose wedding we had been to the previous October in Kansas City, actually. And we got to see them the same weekend. And, went to the 9/11 memorial, which was very touching. It was that morning, it was quite rainy. And to see that memorial on a gloomy day, it just really sort of put it all into perspective. It was incredibly touching. I actually was in upstate New York on 9/11. So it was quite a sense of, I don't know, almost a closure. We also went and saw, is it called Come From Away? It's the play.
Come From Away.
Yeah, the play about the little town that had all the 747s land, and they had to put all those 35,000 people up or something. So it was a great sort of cathartic weekend in that aspect as well. And this is great. In fact, I just told Julie the other day, said, this is something you never thought you'd ever hear me say. I really want to go to New York. I'm not sure if it's just because we're sort of not told we can't go anywhere and I just want to get out of the house, or.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a piece of it, but it's been a couple of years, so that desire probably creeps back in after a while. So
play,
Yeah. So okay. So we've talked about you traveling for work and some traveling for pleasure. But let's take it back home for you. So Dry Creek Valley, northern Sonoma County. I think people who have even a casual knowledge of Dry Creek know that it's populated largely by family-run wineries, and Zinfandel. It's famous for Zinfandel, Sauvignon Blanc. People know those are some of the basics. Tell us something about Dry Creek Valley that maybe the average wine drinker doesn't know.
There's a ton of Chardonnay and Cabernet grown there. It's really interesting. It's amazing when you are in a small plane and fly up Dry Creek. It's only 11 miles from where it flows into Russian River, and the headwaters are now at Lake Sonoma. It's 11 miles distance there. But when you're up above and you're looking down, the number of vineyards that are sort of out of sight from the road, that are up on the hillsides, tucked back in, it's amazing how much vineyard is actually grown there. You just don't really see. It's it's funny, Gabe, when you said something that most people don't know. Just yesterday or the day before, Julie and I were out, and someone was tilling the ground. I couldn't see it. I was looking around, but there was a smell of the earth. I could smell it, and it took me back to childhood like that. I just, all of a sudden, I could remember, because when I grew up about 3 miles from the winery out on West Dry Creek Road. So I was a Westerner, you know. And in those days, there were still predominantly prune trees growing in the area. They were just in late 1960s, they were replacing prune trees with grapevines again. And this had gone since pre-Prohibition times. And I will never forget when they bulldozed or, you know, took the tree roots out of the orchard that was around our house. There were these great mounds, you know, to a 6-year-old, there were mountains. You'd run to the top and fall down and roll down in the dirt. But I can remember them tilling the soil and going out as a little boy, and the worms were, you know, as big as my arm felt like, and just the smell of that soil. And it was funny to have that so quickly just take me back to running and playing in those great big mountains of dirt.
Yeah, it's really incredible how smell can do that almost as much as anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about flying over Dry Creek Valley. I've been lucky enough to go over it in a helicopter a few times, and what I find so incredible is just how diverse the terroir is. And then if you happen to go over neighboring Alexander Valley, how very similar all of Alexander Valley is to itself, where Dry Creek Valley is just so diverse.
It is, you know, and it's a long, narrow valley. I mean, it's only 3.5 miles wide at its widest point. So, you know, we say valley, well, yeah, it's essentially watershed because it's got fairly steep hillsides on both sides, but there are a lot of wonderful benches up in there. I mean, one of our Zinfandels comes from just about mid-valley, is one of our family vineyards, the Bushnell Vineyard. And it's, you know, 15-acre parcel up on a bench that sits up above the valley floor, and you can't see it from the road. But it's this big, long, wide bench up there. It's almost like a plateau. It's really cool. And then, you know, you have different growings because of the erosion and things over the years. Your soil compositions all throughout the valley, and not to forget that until Lake Sonoma was built, Dry Creek was a gushing flood zone. It would flood every, you know, 3rd or 5th year. And so you had a lot of topsoil washing down into the valley floor over, you know, sediment over time. And so it's added some really interesting layers of soil. It's a fun place to be.
It sure is. I know it's a fun place to visit. I think we should drink some wine. But I've got an Alvarinho here from northern Portugal. So tell me a bit about this wine, Ed, and why you thought we should.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
You know, it was really funny, Gabe, when we talked about doing this. Immediately, you know, I shift into marketing mode, and what am I going to do? And oh my God! And I thought, well, let's just think about something that's fun and meaningful, and why is it fun and meaningful? Prior to working at Pedroncelli, I used to sell wine corks. That was my career for about 15 years. I've been in the business. I realized I'm in my 39th year. I must have started when I was like 5 or something, I
guess. That sounds about right.
I spent, I was about 13 years, and I went to Portugal 15 times in 13 years, I think is what I find. I looked at my passports and counted it up one time. And as I was thinking about this evening, I thought, man, I wish I would have paid more attention to the wines that I was treated to in those years. When I would go over, I would take my customers to visit the cork forests, the cork manufacturing facilities, and then it was typically a 5-day on the ground kind of trip. And part of our trip was always going up into the Douro Valley, having a wonderful meal, on a quinta up there. And they're very rustic, sort of ranch style, wood fired ovens. I remember, I will never forget this. It was a July day. It was sort of balmy. July in Portugal, it's kind of humid. We're up in the Douro. Had the night before was always our first night. We stayed at this hotel that was right on the beach, just outside of Porto. And there's this little restaurant called Aquario, and we go there. You're finally relaxed. You're in country 2 or 3 days, so your jet lag is overcome a little bit. Finally going to be in one spot for 3 or 4 days, so you just kind of relax. We'd always drink too much Superbock and eat too much food and drink too much wine. The next day, then you had to drive 2.5 hours up in the mountain. It was always pleasant. But I remember this one particular time, and it was a hot day. And we get up there, and you can smell the wood smoke in the little outdoor wood fire. And this Portuguese woman in a little maid's outfit sort of thing. I mean, it's like everything you've seen on a postcard out of 1965. She comes and she's got this tray with white port, chilled white port, which is something we just don't do in the US. And
True.
And, so and they're kind of funky old Marie Antoinette glasses, I mean, it's like being in 1965. It's just amazing. And then I kind of key into what's going on with the wood fire, and they're grilling sardines over the wood fire. And then they give you these little, little dinner roll size pieces of bread, and you open them like a clamshell, and you pull the fish off of the bone, and you eat this oily, salty, wood fire smoked fish in a crusty bread, drinking white port on the side of the Douro Valley in 100-degree temperature on a trip that somebody else paid for.
Why'd you come home?
Because my liver couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And my job was not only, I would take my customers over there, and I was always with, like my biggest customers were the ones that I would take to, keep them interested in the product.
Of course.
So here I am with a half a dozen of my biggest customers, most important customers in my list. And I got to make sure they're on the bus. I got to be there for breakfast. And I got to make sure I'm the last one in the bar to make sure they all get to bed that night so that I can be there first thing in the morning. So, there's quite a bit of, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of work. But that was a part of, that's just one day of these trips that we would take. And it's, I was in my 30s and 40s, and, it's sort of the high point. You're young and healthy and a lot of energy and, having way too much fun. And so there's just so much joy and fun. And the thing I remember too is the Vinha Verde and the light, crisp white wines. And a friend of ours introduced, so then now let's fast forward 30 years. A friend of ours has a wine shop, or has a wine shop and has become a friend in Burlingame, just south of San Francisco Airport. And Gerald, if you want an opinion, ask Gerald, you'll get 2 or 3. That's why he and I get along so well, I'm certain. But he is the coolest wine shop, and he just always has fun, different stuff. Well, he kept saying to Julie, boy, next time you and I are, flying out, come down, stay overnight. I got this place in San Francisco to take you for dim sum. I want to take you. He said, it's the most incredible thing you've ever eaten in your life. It's a great spot. So we went down. We're flying somewhere. Went down. Gerald came, picked us up at the hotel, drove us into the city. We go to Happy Time Dumpling. Wait, that's not right. Julie got it. It's called Dumpling Time. Dumpling Time in the city. We drive up, and there is a line outside the restaurant. It had to be 50, and this is even pre-COVID, so people weren't lining up yet. I mean, this is in this line.
Yeah.
Patio is full, restaurant is full, a line of people waiting to get in. And so Gerald gets out and grabs his little wine bag over his shoulder, and away we go. We walk right past the line, walk into the restaurant. The owner comes up, gives him a big kiss. And one of the waitresses comes up and gives him a big hug. And did so-and-so take care? Yes. We bypassed the whole line, walked in, got us a table. So the three of us sitting at a two-top, and Gerald pulls out Riedel glasses and a bottle of this Soalheiro. And we had asked him for a mixed case of white wines once before, and he had put one of these, but it's a different, it's a yellow label. I mean, it's the same maker, but just a different level. But this was the one he brought to dinner. And it was just so delightful. I love the grape. I mean, I love Alvarinho. It's just such a nice, light, crisp, clean, bright fruit. I mean, it just has all the things I love about wanting a white wine.
Yeah, it has all those things you said. It's got some nice minerality on the finish, but it's got that citrus, like you said, crispy. I love the fact that, you sort of tied this wine into really two stories. So it's like meaningful for you because you've had so many good times in Portugal, but it's also meaningful for you because your friend brought to dinner. So it's like both of those things. And it's a lovely bottle of wine. And the other thing, I think so many people, of course, know that Portugal is known for pork. Less people, but still a decent amount of people know them for their red table wines. But I don't think nearly as many people know that they can make really lovely white wines.
Well, and especially for what I'm looking for, typically when I'm drinking white wine, on a day like today, especially, and for the most part, I can enjoy a really well-made, bigger, fuller-bodied Chardonnay. But typically, if I'm drinking white wine, I want something crisp and clean and refreshing. I'm generally having it just with a snack, maybe before dinner, is what I'm looking for. So this is the kind of thing. And this, to me, there's something happening in the back and the sides of my tongue here, flavor-wise, that is a real, it's a 2019, but this is a really young wine to me. The flavors of the fermentation, the fermentation esters are still present. And my first job at Alexander Valley Vineyards in the early 80s, I was a cellar hand. And one of my favorite things I've ever done in winemaking was the first filtration. And it's colder than heck in January in the cellar. And you've got to, you're cleaning the filter and you've got to push the water out of the filter with wine. So you hook up to the tank and you open a little valve on the filter so that it can push all the water out. It's got a sight glass. And as soon as you see the oily alcohol and water combination come in the sight glass, you start just tasting it, and you'll find the point where the balance switches between there's water in the filter and there's wine in the filter. But that, it takes a little while for that to happen. So a lot of liquid is spilling on the floor of the cellar. And while that's happening, it's really cold. So the aromas kind of stay heavy in the air. And that smell of freshly fermented juice just sort of, it's just a
better than new car smell.
It's better than new car smell.
Well, that's saying something.
And probably better for you.
Well, yeah, for sure. I agree with you, though, that this wine clearly has quite a life ahead of it.
So imagine this wine, Gabe, with either those sardines that I was talking about, wood-fired, or grill some prawns with the skins on, so that you get that the smoky. There's something about the shell of the prawn when it's grilling and the smoke that comes from that makes for amazing wine pairing.
Yeah, I was thinking of craving sort of as I'm sipping this, like some soft, semi-stinky cheese.
Yeah, I'm not a
That's
stinky cheese guy, so but I
not
would do I
too
would do
stinky.
like maybe a triple cream.
Okay, yeah, that would work. Yeah, not stinky, but it would work. Yeah. Well, thank you for choosing this. This is delicious,
Mm.
and it won't be the last time I drink it.
It brought back some good memories.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and some great stories. So I selected a Syrah. It's Corralillo. It's 2015 from the winery is Matetic, which is a Chilean producer, and they are a totally biodynamic winery. They make Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Syrah, a couple of blends. And yeah, I selected this wine for a couple of reasons. One is that I do have an affinity for the wines of Chile in general. They're very interesting to me. And another reason is that, in in drinking wine with you or talking about wine with you over the years, I've gotten the impression with reds, you do like, a somewhat bold red that is in your wheelhouse. And I wanted something that was a little bit bold, but not too big. And that's kind of, that's pretty much why I select the reasons I selected.
I got to tell you, this is one of the cleanest smelling corks. Oh my God. It's just, so I've been known, Gabe, to buy specific winemakers' wines because I appreciate their quality of cork. That's what happens when you're in that world for so long. This is beautiful. Boy, spice in the nose, huh?
Yeah, for sure, and some savory herbs I get too. So being a cork guy, who spend a lot of time selling corks, where are you on, cork today? What are your thoughts on DM and all that and closures in general?
Well, I worked for a subsidiary of the largest cork manufacturer in the world, so I could probably sit here and give you 763 million reasons why you should never use anything but natural cork. But then if you were to look at our own product, you'd notice that probably 40% of our product is under screw cap and not a single one of them under DM. And I am really, really slow to warm up to the whole DM movement. I'll tell you the biggest endorsement I heard for DM. I went to an event sponsored by DM. I went for the wine tasting, but it was sponsored by them. So you have to listen to, it's kind of like a timeshare, you got to listen to the pitch. And
if you want the free 13-inch Panasonic TV,
they didn't know they weren't giving out TVs. I think it might have been giving out Sony Walkmans or something. Rick Sayer, who's a winemaker, I don't know what his role now, but for my time selling to Rodney Strong, he was a winemaker at Rodney Strong. And they had by far the most difficult quality assurance program that there was in the industry that I was selling to. Very, very tight restrictions. Difficult, but a good customer. I mean, if you could pass muster, you didn't have to worry about anything afterward because they had done everything in advance. And Rick sat up there on that dais and said that since he'd started using DM, he was not noticing any cork tape. Now, I'm telling you, for me, that was quite a testimony. But as I mentioned, I've been to the factories, and I've seen what they grind up and use as particulate matter. And I've shipped 8 containers of corks that arrived in California and had too much TCA and had to be shipped back to Portugal. This is in the 90s. And I know where those corks went. And you can tell me that they have all the cleaning methods in the world that takes TCA out and you don't have to worry about it. And I don't doubt for a minute that they have the technology to do that. What I do doubt is that they're doing it on all the product. I've been there. I know these guys. I know their business mentality, the way they work. The demand is too high. There are just a few things in the cork industry, and I still have some very good friends in the business whom I would think, if I asked a very direct question under the cone of silence, would give me an honest answer, and I listen to them, but I still think they're full of bull. I think they've swallowed the Kool-Aid. So Dion, to me, it seems to be working. But boy, Gabe, I don't know. I don't know that I want to put ground up cork waste that's been treated in contact with wine. The flip side of that is then you're depending on a natural product that you're trying to wash and clean. It's a natural product. It's not manufactured, so there's no way to govern exactly what happens. And you're going to get, in fact, I just today just had to deal with one today. So, and it's disappointing.
So it sounds like what you're saying is, though, you feel you've heard good things, you've seen good things, the sample size is too small for you.
Well, I think the sample size is huge now. It's enormous. I mean, I am shocked at how many bottles of wine we open. And I don't buy expensive wine, you know, $25 bottles of wine. How many $25 bottles of wine there are sealed with the there is other stuff happening with natural corks that they're talking about doing individual evaluation, cork by cork, and that they can measure the level of TCA down to the single cork level. And again, I do the math, and I just, you know, if I order 500,000 corks, do the math, even if it only takes them 1 second per cork. It's just that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But all of these things have done a really good thing. And that is they've gotten an overall level of cork taint in the United States. And I don't know that this is true for all of the rest of the world, but I do know in the United States, they've lowered the cork. I would guess the level of cork taint is probably less than 1% at this point. I know it's less than 2, and I'll bet it's less than 1, which is still, I mean, if you had 1% of the brakes in the world failing, that would be good.
That's true. That's true. So what do you think of this Syrah?
I love it. And so what's really nice is full mouth without being harsh tannins. Beautiful nose, and actually the fruit follows through almost identically from nose to middle of the mouth. That spiciness that I mentioned earlier, it's almost like a this is one of my weird descriptors, a crushed rose petal. So if you smell rose petals, that's one thing, but if you bruise them, they have a different odor, and it's almost a sharper odor, and I'm getting a little of that. It's really pleasant to me. Tiny bit of meatiness. I'm not getting a whole lot of meatiness out of it.
No, not at all. It is.
Do you think there's any residual sugar in this?
1.7 grams per liter. What I think is also interesting, you're right. You know, we could have picked most any wine, and we both We both chose wines that are, this one's about a retail of $28. I think the Alvarinho's in that same ballpark-ish.
Yeah, it was it's not marked, but yeah, it's right in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're both in that ballpark, which, is nothing to sneeze at dollar-wise, but it's not super high-end price-wise either, which brings me to this, the thought, conversation I've had with a few people, and I think you're there with me. We both, neither of us really believe in the snobbery of wine. We kind of, we kind of just like enjoying wine. We're serious about it, but, to a point. It shouldn't be stuffy. How do you feel we're doing with that in the US?
Well, I think much like most of any sort of consumer industry these days, social media has impacted that a lot. And there's you no longer have to go to a venerated wine critic to get your information on a wine. You can A, Google it, B, Instagram it. It just, it's available to you just at your fingertips. And so some of the snobbery is diminishing as a result of that. I think, when we were talking about corks, there's always going to be people who buy 54 millimeter corks and spend $5 a piece on them. But that's a really, really, really small percentage of the number of corks purchased. And I think there's always going to be room for the Screaming Eagles and the wines out there that are just sought after. They're wonderfully made, exceptionally good fruit, but there's 300 cases of them as compared to the, hundreds of thousands of cases of really well-made Cabernet that's very drinkable and very enjoyable at $25 and under. I have sort of my career has been about making it more fun. I may or may not have noticed I have a bit of a sarcastic nature and like to sort of make fun of things and do things like, for our wine club, I've done wine and cookie pairing. I've done wine and gourmet potato chip pairing, and I've done wine and gourmet popcorn pairing. I'm a snack eater. I love to eat snacks. And so I want to know which wines go with snacks. And I'm a little tired of, this would be good with a cheese made from a goat that grew on the side of a hill in the shade and was only there for 24 hours before he moved into the barn. That kind of stuff doesn't do it for me. I'm much more casual about my wine consumption.
But yeah, and only a certain amount of people, kind of like you said, there's only so many cases of, Eagle, let's say, only so many people are really interested or have access to that cheese from that goat that sat under that one fig tree for an hour. The flavored popcorn that you're going to give people sort of license to try a wine with, more people have access to that.
I have fun. I love being with novice wine drinkers because the first thing they'll say is, I don't know anything about wine. Well, do you know if you like it or you don't like it? Yeah, I can usually figure that out. That's all you need to know. That's number one. But to do fun little things with them, like talking about smelling an empty glass. And then, what are you talking about? When your glass is empty, smell it. You're going to find different things in that empty glass than you find with wine in there. Smell it out of your left nostril and then smell it out of your right nostril. Tell me which one you can smell more through. You go, oh no. They do it. They go, oh my God, you're right. I can smell better through X nostril. And when you sort of take it to those really simple levels, it takes the mystery away. And all of a sudden you've armed a novice with a trick that they're going to be able to tell their wine snob friend and put them in their place, because a wine snob friend doesn't know any more about wine than whether they like it or dislike it. They just happen to have the words and the vocabulary to describe wine. And that's really the only difference.
I couldn't agree with you more. Speaking of fun, Ed, this has been a whole lot of fun.
It's been all right. Okay.
All right. Well, I was hoping for a higher grade than all right, but I'll take it. Thank you so much.
Been absolutely delightful. Let's see. How do I get my glass to your glass? There we go. Cheers, buddy.
Okay. Cheers. We're going to do this in person soon.
Soon.
What do you think? Could you be a little taller?
You missed it. That would have been the perfect opening. You looked away.
Yeah, that's that would have been pretty good.